Can it be that we each have lived many, many lives but have forgotten?
Yeah.
How and why does past life regression help one of your clients?
It goes back to the idea that we come to Earth here again and again for learning and growth as a soul and spirit. And so what's fascinating to me is this idea that over all that research, one of the things they kept saying was we come back here again and again to learn and to grow and to develop as souls. And we come with this group of soulmates, soul friends, soul family, this soul group of ours, and we play different roles in these different parts of our lives. And so we may be coming back again and again, just finding different scenarios, different time periods, different places in the world in which to understand these extraordinary concepts.
Come meet the man who wrote the guidebook on past lives, Craig Meriwether, right here on World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment.
This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
Hey, you found it. You've arrived in the right place at the right time. This is World Awakenings, a fast track to enlightenment. I'm your host, Carl Gruber. I started the show in the summer of 2018, and now here we are with episode 244, as we continue our mission of meeting and speaking with some of the world's greatest teachers, masters, experts, and authorities on all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening. Now, don't forget, you can now watch the show on both YouTube and New Reality TV, and of course, you can listen to the show on Apple Podcasts and any audio-only online outlet throughout the world. So with that, let's head off to meet today's guest. And our guest is Craig Meriwether, a certified clinical hypnotherapist and the founder of the Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy, where he helps clients explore deep healing, subconscious transformation, and the timeless journey of the soul through past life regression and spiritual hypnotherapy. Now, Craig's journey into this profound work began with his training at the Hypnotherapy Academy of America. His time there was nothing short of life-changing. Over 2.5 months, Craig received intensive classroom instruction in clinical hypnotherapy and medical hypnosis with a rare emphasis on past life and natal regression. That deep immersion set the foundation for the healing work that he offers today. And Craig is also the author of several books, including Past Lives Guidebook, The Power Behind Your Beliefs, and Depression 180. So with that, I am looking forward to this. Hey, welcome to World Awakenings, Craig.
Hi, Carl. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while, so I'm glad we're finally here.
Yeah, I'm absolutely intrigued on everything that you do. As I told you before we started recording, I've had a number of hypnotherapists on the show, and it's really a really interesting thing that you do. Now, before we take a deep dive into what you do as a hypnotherapist in past life regression, I'd love to know what led you to hypnotherapy in the first place, and did you have a previous career prior to becoming a certified hypnotherapist?
Yeah, it was never the intention to ever become a hypnotherapist. You know, it wasn't the dream in my high school years, but it was really the depression and anxiety I was struggling with as a teenager. And this is the 1980s, so there's no internet. There's not a whole lot you can look up. It's whatever book you could find at the bookstore or at the library, whatever talk therapists you might find in Yellow Pages. Certainly, sure 14-year-old's not going to start asking his friends, for recommendations on talk therapists. And so it was really just something I struggle with, and something that I just assumed this is how it's going to be, this is how you feel. And it was really with the kind of personal growth movement, the personal development movement, self-growth movement of the 1990s. Tony Robbins became super popular and then kind of brought a lot of other people up with him. Oprah was becoming really popular on TV, as well as the introduction of the SSRI drugs like Prozac and things, because it opened up a conversation and people were now willing to talk about depression and anxiety. And as I was moving into my 20s, I was studying and researching more. One of the things that kept coming up again and again, whether on the internet was coming out in the late 1990s, whether blog posts or just conversations online or in books or magazine articles, there'd be bullet points of like, here's the 5 things you can do to change your life. And one of them was always hypnotherapy. It just kept coming up again and again. And so it intrigued me and interested me. So I was really diving till the 2000s because I'm doing all this kind of personal growth work. I was doing some talk therapy and things, but it never seemed to really hit the core issue, whatever that may have been, because it was probably just something I'd placed in the subconscious mind in that locked box of the unconscious. And it was really just hearing this therapy being, the testimonials of people and the recommendations of people that I admired and was kind of following with their books and videos and things, that I decided, well, maybe this is the next thing to try. And I did a lot of deep healing work with that. On the other aspect of this that all kind of fits together is that I grew up very religious. I grew up in the Episcopal Church with, if people aren't familiar with that, that's the kind of Catholicism light of the UK. Craig Meriwether, you don't get more British than that, in UK than that. And I grew up Episcopalian, was born into the Episcopal Church. I think it was just because of the church that was up the street. If it was Methodist or Lutheran, probably been Lutheran or Methodist. But about 5-6 blocks up from our house in walking distance was the Episcopal Church. So that's where we went. And I actually kind of liked it. I liked the robes and the candles and the ceremony and the ritual of it all, the Eucharist. But I also started going from 6th grade to 12th grade to a Baptist run school. So the entirety of my life was just religion, Monday through Friday, a lot of religion. There was, assemblies that were very heavily focused on religion, of course, at a Baptist school, Bible class every day. But the school was like 40 minutes away from my house. So basically all my friends were in the neighborhood. That's, your friends were the friends you had, next door to you. And all of those friends kind of went to the church. And so it was a lot of church activities after school, just the youth group kind of stuff, or weekends, going to do youth group stuff, of course, church on Sunday. And so those very formative years, all the way up to about 18, 19, were very heavily influenced by church and even getting into the charismatic movement, because I was looking for that spiritual relief, that mountaintop high, because it relieved the depression. And so I was very interested in learning more about spirituality, and moved to Santa Cruz with my then girlfriend, now wife of some 34 years. Moved to Santa Cruz, California. Grew up in San Diego, then moved to Santa Cruz in the early 1990. And worldview just opened up again. There's no internet, so it's just kind of like what you grew up with. That was your worldview. There were 4 TV channels. There's half a dozen radio stations, and so it's just kind of your worldview is what you grew up with in terms of your friends and school and church or something, or whatever those kind of influences were. And when I went to Santa Cruz, of course, it just opens up. That's Silicon Valley, or nearby anyway. It's about 90 minutes south of San Francisco, about 45 minutes west of Silicon Valley, Mountain View, and Cupertino, and Santa Clara. And so this worldview opened up. It was a stereotypical cliched melting pot. And on the weekends, there was festivals and fairs and dance and music and food. And as you get to know people and you're taking Zen meditation classes and you're learning martial arts and you're doing all these different things, you also learn about their philosophies and their theology and their spirituality. And things like reincarnation I'd never really heard about before. I was understanding more about it. You're taking, world history and world religion classes up at the university. And so my understanding of these different philosophies and theories and spiritualities grew and grew. And it was a slow drip, certainly. But the other aspect of hypnotherapy is that not only can help you relieve the stress and the tension and the pressure and particularly the hurt and pain from trauma that somebody's experienced in the past, but also has this ability with these tools and techniques to move you into a deeper spiritual state as well. Now, hypnotherapy in and of itself is not doing it to you. It's not magic or mysticism in and of itself. It's just tools and techniques. And, just like meditation isn't the thing that's in and of itself is calming you. It's you using these tools of meditation where it's focusing on the breath or a mantra or something. These are all variations of meditation. It's not meditation in and of itself or the meditation teacher or the recording that's doing it. It's that you're allowing yourself to use these tools to move yourself into a deeper state. Same with therapeutic hypnosis. It's just an umbrella term for these various techniques and tools that you can use to help somebody create healing within the subconscious mind, within themselves. But it's of course, if you know, and you've had many other hypnotherapists on here, it's not control or brainwashing. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's giving back control. And nowadays, it's quite easy to find some sort of ayahuasca ceremony you may want to attend. Go to Malibu or go to Austin or get on a relatively inexpensive flight down to Central America or South America and work with a shaman who has been trained for maybe decades in these kind of ceremonies and rituals. But back in the day, you couldn't do that. It was highly illegal. I'm sure it's still illegal in some states. And so you didn't have access to that those kind of plant medicines and those kind of techniques and tools. And what hypnotherapy provided me was a way to access that deeper level of myself. And so all these things kind of converged into, later in life, just pivoting and saying, well, one thing leading to another. I'd written a book about depression, more about the scientific basis of the different, what's going on in that realm when people experience depression. And so I kind of started pivoting into a more, maybe I'll be a personal growth person, or maybe I'll help self-help books or something. And just one thing, again, slow drip, one thing led to another. And I find myself at the Hypnotherapy Academy of America, mainly because not only, of course, a great education there, great training, very intensive, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday for 2.5 months. Extraordinary. Yeah, it's not like a history class at the university. It's 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. This is Monday through Friday. Of course, then there's study groups on the weekend and practicing and things. But you learn clinical hypnotherapy first. That's the first 6 weeks, first 300 hours. Clinical hypnotherapy, helping people with current life issues of hurt and pain and anger and the resentment or regret people may have, maybe the shame or the guilt or the trauma they experienced, whether it was a month ago or 50 years ago. And the training revolves in the first 6 weeks around helping people release and resolve and heal that. Then moving into medical hypnosis, more like pain management and healing acceleration, those kind of things. Then is past life regression. Once you learn all of that, once you have that foundation of helping people not only with physical pain, but the emotional pain and resolving healing trauma, then you learn the deeper spiritual aspects of it. So extraordinary training. So just basically kind of a slow drip over.
Wow. Well, let me dive in here. You've covered a lot of ground already here. And first of all, I'd like to say, you mentioned the yellow pages, and there's young people out there going, what's that? It used to be called the phone book, the yellow. You could look up people's phone numbers on there since there was no internet. But, you mentioned, too, as a 14-year-old, you grew up in this very religious, organized religious young life, but you were depressed at that age and anxious, and so many young people experience that at that age. Why were you anxious and depressed? Did you ever figure that out?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just issues going on at home and things. It's just personal issues, and I know depression and anxiety. Again, more of an umbrella term for lots of different issues that could be going on, and depression is one of those insidious kind of symptoms that people feel that, yeah, maybe there's trauma or some sort of issues that have created fear or hurt or pain or anger in life. But maybe it was, side effects of a medication, or maybe grief due to the unexpected loss of a loved one or the expected loss of a loved one, or, maybe a traumatic brain injury. It's been shown that depression can be related to a traumatic brain injury 2 years after the fact. And so it's one of these things of, lots of people struggle with it, but it's not a one size fits all. And it's not that, okay, well, because you're depressed, therefore 5 sessions of talk therapy is what you need, or this pill is what you need, or, it may be very different for different people. As a hypnotherapist, I may see 5 people in a week with depression, but all 5 may have very different reasoning on why they're feeling like that. And so in and of itself, it's just one of those frustrating aspects of life that we go to, and whether it's hormone changes or trauma or side effects of a medication, or just went through surgery. What an invasive thing to have somebody cut open the body and do some healing work there. So it can be related to a lot of different things, and that's why I find hypnotherapy fascinating, because it's not me trying to figure somebody out. It's you doing the releasing and letting go and healing work that you need to do, because it's your subconscious mind. So in and of itself, what the problem is, because it's not to say it's your fault, but you're the one with these warning signals of anxiety or fear or anger, or the signals of needing to comfort or care for yourself, of maybe depression or sadness or grief. It's your brain creating the chemistry to have that feeling stay in your body. And oftentimes, though, that chemistry is changed because of the thoughts happening in the mind, conscious or unconscious. And so why you're doing it, maybe unconsciously. But that's the power of hypnotherapy, is that by quieting down the conscious level of mind, then you can access the subconscious and be quite healing that way.
Well, let's dive into, as we know, hypnotherapy involves way more than just doing past life regressions, but that's one of your focuses. Yeah. How and why does past life regression help one of your clients?
Well, it's not unlike, it goes back to the idea that we come to Earth here again and again for learning and growth as a soul and spirit. And so there obviously needs to be some sort of understanding on a spiritual nature. I don't think you'd be looking for someone to do past life regression if you didn't already have those kind of interests or your own ideas about that. But a lot of the work I do comes from the research of Dr. Michael Newton, who passed away in 2011. But back in 1969, as a psychotherapist, he was working with a patient of his and wanting to release and help him resolve some issues. He regressed him using hypnotherapy, regressed him back to childhood to resolve some issues there. Well, as he's doing this regression work in hypnotherapy, the guy he was working with kept going. He went past childhood, went past being a newborn, and he went back to being a soul. Now, it's not time travel. It's not Marty McFly in Back to the Future. You're not going back in time. It's just a memory, just like you might have a memory of a work meeting last month or high school or something. It's just a memory. Well, he goes back to remembering being just a soul before incarnating here on Earth. And he does some deep healing work in that session with Michael Newton that he hadn't been able to do before. And so this fascinated Michael Newton, and he'd wondered if other people could access this state, these kind of memories, and if he could get somebody into that state, because it's quite accidental this first time he did it. So he spent some time in the early 70s working with people, seeing if he could find some sort of protocol to regularly, be able to get people back into that state on a regular basis. And he developed this protocol, and as he's working with people, he he notices that people are having similar experiences to each other of this soul world. Well, these people don't know each other. There's no internet. It's 1970s. There's no internet. They're not WhatsApping each other. They're not texting each other. Not going on email or anything. They don't know each other. They come from all walks of life, from different cultures and upbringings and age groups, and from around the country, maybe around the world. And they're coming to Michael Newton, and they're having similar experiences to each other. So he does 20 years of work, all the 70s, all the 80s, and then he releases his book, Journey of Souls. Great book. That was 1992. He then does another decade's worth of research and releases Destiny of Souls, I think in 2002. And this is 30 years of research with tens of thousands of people, 365 days a year over the course of 30 years. He worked with tens of thousands of people, a lot of whom had very similar experiences to each other, even though they didn't know each other. And so that's kind of the basis I come at this with. I was fascinated by the work he did. And it wasn't just like he channeled this information or that he was a psychic and he tuned into the universe and brought this information forth, or he just worked with one person. He worked with thousands upon thousands of people in over 30 years, for 20 years before his first book, 30 years for the second book. And the Michael Newton Institute is still around. He developed that, and I created that in 2003 or so. And they've released several books since then. I think they just released one recently, 2023 or so, Wisdom of the Soul. They're still doing the research 60 years later. And so what's fascinating to me is this idea that over all that research, one of the things they kept saying was, we come back here again and again to learn and to grow and to develop as souls. And we come with this group of soulmates, soul friends, soul family, this soul group of ours, and we play different roles in these different parts of our lives. And what's fascinating is it's not maybe unlike learning math at school. You just don't start writing those crazy equations on the chalkboard. You have to start in the first grade and learn that 2 + 2 = 4. Then you move into the second grade and you're learning subtraction. Then the third grade, you're learning your times table. Then the fourth grade, division. In high school, you're going into algebra and calculus and trigonometry. Then you're going to get your master's degree in writing those crazy equations. It took, 15 years from 2 + 2 = 4 to writing those crazy equations, each grade building on each other. So if you look at each grade, first grade, second grade, high school, going into university, bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, you look at all that, each grade, each year as a life. You can say it may take multiple lives to really understand that. And that's just mathematics. Imagine something even maybe more complicated, like love or compassion or empathy or something. And so we may be coming back again and again, just finding different scenarios, different time periods, different places in the world in which to understand these extraordinary concepts. Even if you look at something like something as, I guess, general as wealth and abundance. Like, well, yeah, it makes sense that you'd live a life as a very wealthy person with your yacht and your private jet and your house in the south of France and the apartment overlooking Central Park. That'd be one of the ways to understand wealth and abundance. But would it not also help you understand wealth and abundance by living in abject poverty in Calcutta, or living paycheck to paycheck in Tennessee, or all of these aspects of life and time and place help develop that understanding of wealth and abundance. So you can imagine, well, what else is out there in terms of relationships with people, and love and all these aspects of it. So it's sort of like the idea of a theater troupe. And like in January, this theater troupe decided, okay, this is the play we're going to do. And here's how these characters in this play are going to go from the first act to the third act and learn and grow and develop. So by the third act, they're They're kind of have grown and learned and they're different people by the end of the play. And here's who's going to play what role, and here are the costumes we're going to use. And then they do that play, and then they take a break, and then in March they decide on another play. But this time it's going to be, 500 years in the past. And here's who's going to play what role, and here's who's going to play what character, and here's the costumes, and here's where we decide we're going to do this play and move it to the other side of the world. And here's how these characters are going to grow and develop from the first act to the third act. It's the same actors. They're just now playing a different role with different costumes at a different place in the world. And so it's the same idea with us. And it doesn't even necessarily, in terms of past lives, need to be linear. Like right now, you read a history book, you start at, 50,000 years ago, and you move up to yesterday, and you just kind of learn history linearly like that. That doesn't necessarily mean that's how we're going to experience past lives or our lives. We don't start 50,000 years ago and then go to 5,000 and then the year zero and then 580 and all that. It's just like plays that a theater troupe may be doing. They may start with a very modern play in January that was written in 2020. And then in March decide they're going to do an ancient Greek tragedy. And then they're going to do a play, a beatnik play from the 1960s. And then they're going to do a Shakespeare play in the summer. And then, they're going to jump around. They're going to do whatever they want to do. And maybe the entire year has a theme, even though they're in different parts of the world in different time periods. And so I know that was a kind of a long answer to maybe a short question, which I don't know if I've even answered.
No, it's all awesome. I love all the information you have. But, I know the late Dolores Cannon was instrumental in teaching about past life regression. As a matter of fact, she developed QHHT, a quantum healing hypnosis technique, and I've actually been on the receiving end of one of those sessions. Did her work influence you, and how does QHHT differ from what you do with your hypnotherapy?
Yeah. So Dolores Cannon is amazing and wonderful. I wouldn't say her work influenced me so much. By the time I kind of got to her and learned about her, I was already kind of swimming in the pool, as it were. In terms of what QHHT is in terms of past life regression, it's sort of like all thumbs are fingers, but not all fingers are thumbs. So all QHHT is past life regression, but not all past life regression is QHHT. And by that, I mean, that's her proprietary, copyrighted, trademarked, patented script for past life regression. And so and there's 3 different levels you can go to in terms of learning as a practitioner. First level is you kind of just do like 20 hours worth of video training, and here's the script, and you read the script. And you then go to level 2, which actually teaches you how to work with people, which is strange that you have to actually work with people before you learn how to work with people. But then you get a second script. And so it's like another 20 hours of video training and stuff. And so it's just her specific way of doing past life regression therapy. The issue with QHHT that some people have is that if you can't do it online, it has to be in person. That was just, and she passed away in 2012, 2014, something like that. So she understood what was happening in terms of Skype and being able to do video calls and things. And she was absolutely against that, which, and again, maybe just her age and her the way she grew up and her training. But QHHT, they needs to be done in person and with this specific script. If that person is not using the script and is not doing it in person, it's not QHHT. What I do in my training and what I've worked with many other people, whether it's more than Michael Newton Institute trainings or done training with Brian Weiss and Roy Wood and all sorts of different people over the last decade or so, on top of the 100 hours of past life regression training at the Hypnotherapy Academy of America, is that there's more room for going specific into what the person needs to work on instead of just following a script. And so with past life regression therapy, there's a wider range of being able to help people in terms of what they need to work. And there's also room for, well, for the jazz and the dance of what happens if something comes up that was unexpected. And so with past life regression therapy, I mean, again, quantum healing hypnosis technique is past life regression. It's just Dolores Cannon's copyrighted version of it.
Yeah.
But what I find that interests me more is that the ability to work with somebody and the ability to work with them, and just because of the technology that has happened just in the last 6 years or so, what research has shown is that, like Zoom sessions, not unlike something like this, I do a lot of my sessions just like this. Because again, with hypnotherapy, I'm not fixing anybody myself. And hypnotherapy in of itself is not fixing anybody. You're gonna do the healing work. I'm just going to guide and going to facilitate. As long as we have a good connection and I can see you, and continuing to check on your ecology, making sure you're doing well, then it works really well over Zoom. And whether it's a talk therapy session, psychotherapy, or relationship counseling, or life coaching, or a doctor's appointment, or hypnotherapy, or a past life regression session, what research shows over the last 5 years is that Zoom sessions work as well as in person. In fact, there's been some research that shows that Zoom sessions work better than in person for all those categories because people feel relaxed and comfortable in their homes. They don't have to drive across town or fly across country, or if you live in a big town, just imagine, trying to get to your appointment on time on a Friday afternoon, rush hour traffic. And when the appointment's over, you're at home. You're already done. So Zoom sessions work really well. Again, probably a long answer to a short question, but in and of itself, QHHT is a wonderful process. Dolores Cannon was a master at what she did. It's just you have to follow exactly what she wants you to do. Whereas more past life regression therapy, you can help the person in the way they need to in that moment. Then I may need to deviate from the script.
Well, it was interesting when I received a QHHT session. It was live and it was long. It was, I don't know, I think it was 5 to 6 hours long, So, but, that being said, I'd like to talk about reincarnation. So you state on one of your websites that various religious and spiritual traditions, including Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, indigenous cultures, understand reincarnation, karma, the soul's evolution, yet we know this. Many people simply write all of that off as New Age woo-woo. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that is mainly a Western culture philosophy of, and I think a very Christian philosophy, because there's some theories around the soul in Christianity that the soul does not exist before birth. And once you move through this life, that's it. You move to heaven or purgatory or hell, or, depending on, again, your kind of specific philosophy of Christianity. And so I think this is relatively new. I mean, and even, in the early Christian churches, there's so much variation. That's why they had to all kind of glom it together in the 300 Constantine. But in terms of, there's so many cultures that have this idea of returning. And again, there's a lot of different theories about it, a lot of different ways of looking at it in terms of time and location on the earth. But I think it's actually a relatively new, more Western idea, because even the European cultures, Vikings and things, had ideas about reincarnation and coming back and returning. And so I think it's relatively new. And in terms of 8 billion people on the earth, I think it's a really small section that don't have any beliefs in it. And it's really just because that's what they were taught.
Well, it's really interesting. One of my most recent guests, Jessica Taylor, who wrote a book called Oh, it's about the history of early Christianity and early
Oh,
Bibles, and she said that many of the early authors of the early versions of the Bible actually wrote about reincarnation, but the main Roman Catholic Church had all of that deleted out of the modern Bible. So now, maybe that's why the Western cultures don't have any clue on it.
yeah, and I think it was more just kind of the when they all gathered just to create one kind of solidified version of Christianity that everybody could agree upon. That some things, well, let's vote on this. Okay, well, majority wins that this is what we believe. And there's people who believe, well, that's the way we've done it for the last 300 years. But in needing one cohesive idea about it, uh, I don't think there's any sort of um, conspiratorial, oh, the Catholic Church decided to. I think it's just like here's a bunch of people and they talked louder and they were able to get a majority of the people there to vote. Like, well, I don't believe in reincarnation, so I don't want it in there, and you agree with me because I'll vote for it. It's just like politics. And so I don't, in and of itself, think there is any sort of cabal that was trying to uh, influence it in some nefarious way. I just think there was a bunch of people that didn't believe in it and they spoke louder and were able to get other people to think in the same manner, or there wasn't enough Christians there who believed in it or cared enough. I was like, okay, I don't care. Think what you want to think. Let's just get this done and over with. I don't know. There's definitely certainly a lot of theories, and that's why books like hers are so fascinating because there were so many different theories because it's of their culture. Because when you move Christianity, so it's like Buddhism. That's why there's so many different versions of Buddhism. Yeah, and as because the local influence will kind of change it, and it's malleable. And I think Christianity was very much that way. And you can see it now. I mean, Baptists and Episcopalians do not go together. I can vouch for that. Those are two very different philosophies. And I got in, not trouble. It was just like there was some backlash for when they found, when it was known that I was Episcopalian. It's not like I was getting, rocks thrown at me or anything. It was just like, I went to this church that didn't practice right,
Mm.
you know, and it's all Christian, and yet there's so many different, even just to look between Mormons and Calvinists and Lutherans and Methodists and Baptists and Episcopalians and look at the difference between Catholics and Episcopalians.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're talking about religion, but I see that you really, like many scientists and hypnotherapists and practitioners, are combining science and spirituality. Now, I've had many hypnotherapists on the show who are increasingly leaning into the spiritual side of things. What role does actual spirituality play in your own work and life?
It's important, and it's ever changing. Um, again, this has been a slow drip. I'll turn 59 in a few months, and it's been a slow drip for 59 years of learning and growing and developing and understanding new techniques and new ways. I was so fascinated by the world for so many decades because I didn't, I grew up San Diego, California, as Episcopalian Baptist. And that was my world as I learned more about Hinduism and Buddhism and different cultures and different versions of even Christianity in South America and Central America. And here's how the Vikings did it, and here's how the early French did. All these different ways of understanding the world and spirituality. And I don't know, maybe age or just interest, or maybe in a book I read somewhere down the road, I deviated more back towards my own kind of culture and ethnicity of the United Kingdom. And now I'm more fascinated about what was going on with the Irish and the Scots and the people living in Wales and England. How did that develop before and after Christianity arrived? And that fascinates me. And so it's this constant growing and developing, and we're learning so much about the more scientific aspects of it too, like you just mentioned, what's going on in the brain, and the idea that consciousness, it's not even an idea, but I think proven to the point that consciousness is non-local, meaning that it's not imprisoned within this skull of ours, but that it can move through space and time, through location. And a lot of that, I write about it in my book, Past Lives Guidebook. I have a big, long chapter about the remote viewing experiments and research done by the government, the U.S. government back in the 70s, 80s, probably still doing it, because if it worked, they'd still be doing it, right? So it's fascinating that even through the experiments of the government, we get a deeper sense of our own spirituality. If consciousness is non-local, and we also showed that consciousness can move forward and backwards in time. What else can we do in terms of the research coming out in the last decade or so of the brain being more of an antenna than the warehouse, the storage unit, that big warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark of memory and consciousness. But the brain is more of an antenna, sort of like, I have the entirety of the world's wisdom right here in this phone, this iPhone of mine, but it's not in the phone. I have to pull it in from somewhere through these cell towers and these servers at universities and Google or wherever this stuff is coming from. So all the information of the world, the wisdom of the world, is not within the phone. I have a couple of pictures, I have a couple of songs, a couple of apps on my phone. Yeah. But the entirety of the world's wisdom, of which I have access to, is not in the phone. I pull it in from somewhere else. And so that's what a lot of research is showing, is that the brain, and a lot of talk, probably even have people talk about it, the pineal gland, that tiny little rice-sized piece of the brain that its main job is melatonin production. But because of all the crystals, there's lots of crystals. If you Google, I have it right here. This is for the YouTube people. So the pineal gland is this piece of the brain right here. You can see that on the visual people. But there's all these crystals in the pineal gland. And in this rice-sized piece of the brain, there's 40,000 of these crystals. And they have nothing to do with melatonin production, which is the main job of the pineal gland. And so this is where the research becomes really exciting, because these crystals, like a lot of crystals, when mechanical pressure is applied, create electrical charge or electromagnetic field. That's why the quartz crystals are in our watch, quartz watches back in the day. And so why are these crystals in the pineal gland? They have nothing to do with melatonin production. This is where the scientific research becomes really exciting, because more and more research is showing, that the brain is more of an antenna, more of a radar, transmitting and pulling in information. And not unlike, a phone, we're just pulling in this information, transmitting this information to somewhere else. And, of course, we could have a 10-hour conversation and probably still have more questions than answers.
Yeah.
But the fascinating part to me, and that's why, again, I basically wrote the book. There's so many great past life books out there, again, whether Dolores Cannon or Michael Newton or Brian Weiss, many, many, many others. The great work of Ian Stevenson about reincarnation, and doing forensic investigations into stories of reincarnation back in the 1960s and 70s. My book, what I wanted to do is focus more on my own skepticism of it all. Because as I learn and I grow, I have more questions than answers often. And I wanted to answer some of those questions. And so for myself, this book was written for me. When you take the writing classes or you talk to your book editor or something, it's like, well, who'd you write this book for? It's like, well, I wrote it for teenagers, or I wrote it for new moms, or I wrote it for new dads, or dads of you have your group of people. Well, I wrote this book for me because while I'm a true believer, I'm also a heavy skeptic of it all.
But you're talking about your book, the
Past Lives Guidebook.
There we go. Yeah, because I know you have a couple other books.
Yeah. The other books are more of the personal growth, self growth, personal development field, Depression 180 and things. But this one, I'm just fascinated. I just got fascinated by, reincarnation, just of the work I've been doing with people, the trainings I've received, first at the Hypnotherapy Academy, and then, with Brian Weiss and the Michael Newton Institute and other places. It's just fascinating to me. But there's also, again, the more it's that thing, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And so I wanted to, because I heard about the remote viewing experiments, and I wanted to see if that tied into some way. And so, and the ideas of this reality of ours, people way smarter than me, coming up with these theories about the universe, this reality of ours being a computer simulation, or is it more of a holographic universe, or is it more of a parallel universe? And so there's multiple Craigs doing these things, maybe in different times, maybe in different places. And so this fascinated me, and does it somehow all tie together? And the research of the brain, what's going on in the pineal gland? I'd heard about that, these crystals in the pineal gland. What does that mean? And how far back does it go? How far, when did people really start looking at the idea or understanding that life does not end with death of this body, but continues on? Do we come back? Because certainly, again, many cultures throughout time, pretty much a lot of them over time, with the exception of some of the Christian communities over the last 2,000 years. So 200,000 years of human beings, Homo sapiens, and 50,000 years of civilization, or whatever it is, 15,000 years after the Ice Age. Many of them, if not all of them, have some form of ancestor veneration and either reincarnation or past lives, or coming back and again and again. And why is that? And so even in the past lives guidebook, I go into the history of a lot of different cultures, places, times. Start 50,000 years ago, Neanderthal burial sites. And is there any indication about how Neanderthals buried their community and their tribe, their family, that they had ideas of life after death? Start there and just move forward. And what do these different cultures and people throughout time think about reincarnation? And then move into the science, and then move into how this could possibly work. And if we can see the past, can we see the future? And again, I don't know. There may be more questions by the end of the book than there are answers, but.
Well, your books all sound fascinating, and I will put the links to your books in the show notes here so people can check them out. You do other things, though. You do more than just past life regression. You also do something called Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy, Divinus Arcana. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, I woke up one day and I thought, what the coolest name would be is Divinus Arcana. It's Latin for sacred mystery. And
Okay.
I bought a website, and I started developing these things because I have Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy. That's how I started. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. That's right near Sedona. We're about a 40-minute drive if we head west, and we'll hit Sedona. And Sedona, as many people know, is kind of this hub of the spiritual community, maybe the New Age movement. And it was very hard to get attention, if you will, in terms of the more spiritual work, because everybody's looking at this, big spotlight on Sedona, and it's hard to jump up and down and wave my hand. So I started off focusing on the more clinical side of things. And then, as I just figured I'll see people in Flagstaff, I'll see people in Phoenix, Arizona, as we move in time, we get technology gets better, and of course, through the whole COVID situation, more of these kind of sessions move to Zoom. And so now I work with people around the country and around the world. Maybe calling my company Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy wasn't the smartest idea, but I've worked with people. I've worked with people in Iceland. I worked with a professional basketball player in Iceland, in the European League. I worked with people who've been in Tahiti and Costa Rica and Puerto Rico and Bulgaria. And it's not to brag or to flex or anything. It's just to show the power of this work that you can do over Zoom. And so there's Arizona Integrated Hypnotherapy. I'm so fascinated by spirituality, and this is the work I really enjoy doing and love doing. I thought I'd kind of set up a different brand, a different company. And so Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy is more of the spiritual side of the work I do. And that's probably the place people should go in terms of, if we want to know more about past life regression and moving up in that life between lives, spiritual work that Michael Newton was doing, and all sorts of different things. So sacredmysteryhypnotherapy.com is where you'll find out more about the more spiritual side of the work I do.
Well, we are speaking to Craig Meriwether, certified hypnotherapist. Some amazing stuff here. Now, hypnotherapy can help heal both physical and mental issues. I mean, why does a person have to be in a hypnotic state in order to heal?
Interesting, yeah, that's I guess the $2 million question. I don't think it's necessary you have to. Certainly there are, those extraordinary stories of miraculous healings where maybe people weren't necessarily in a hypnotic trance state. But I think it's all about just quieting down that conscious level of mind so you can move out of that stress response. Life is challenging, and not just now, but back in the 80s, back in the 70s, back in the 1880s. Life is stressful, life is challenging, and oftentimes we armor ourselves by having that fight or flight response on, and that's a very difficult state to be in to do healing, because all the energy from your immune system, from your digestive system, is moving into the big muscles to fight or to escape. You get that tunnel vision. Your heart starts racing. You get the blood to the big muscle of your arms and to your legs. It's a very difficult state of mind and body to be in to create healing, because your subconscious mind thinks you're in danger right now and wants to protect you right now. Healing is tomorrow's business. You got the common cold, that's tomorrow's business. You have to digest that sandwich so you have energy in 7 hours. That's not important right now. You're in danger right now. The problem is the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. There's a whole nother conversation right there. So I think in terms of being able to do this deeper healing, you need to relax and rest the body, quiet down that conscious level of mind, maybe to the point where, if the volume knob on the stereo is at 10, you need to turn it down to a 1, and just quiet it down. Then you can focus on the healing aspects of the subconscious mind. It can do it. It's been shown to be able to heal pretty much every organ in the body. It knows how to heal a broken leg. Yeah, put a cast on and go get an x-ray. But it's not the cast or the x-ray that's healing the leg. It's your subconscious mind is fusing those bones together, healing the cut on a finger, the scrape on an arm. You ever have that experience of somebody points out, hey, you have a big scrape on your arm. How'd you get that? I was like, oh, I didn't know that was there. It's like the subconscious mind knew there was a problem and started the healing work before you're even consciously aware of it. And so that's the extraordinary part of this. It can be doing it in the background, but if the system is overwhelmed because all the volume knobs and the bass and the treble are all at 10, you need to turn those knobs down and then access your own healing potential.
Well, Craig, that is all awesome stuff. We've got just a couple minutes left here. And, I saw on your website that you quoted one of the world's most famous spiritual teachers, Marianne Williamson.
Oh, yeah.
She says, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. And I'd have to say, you will never be lacking for business, because most of the people on the planet have built in subconscious barriers.
Yeah, and myself included. Again, this has kind of been a slow drip just for my own spiritual education and healing, my own issues with depression and anxiety. And as I learn and as I grow, as I do my own healing work over the last almost 60 some years. Okay, maybe I started in my teenage years, so more 50 years or so. It's like I learn and I grow, and it's like these are extraordinary tools that I use in my own life. Let me help other people with them as well. And it's not that I fix anybody, or that these techniques and tools of hypnotherapy or past life regression or QHHT or whatever it may be. It's not that they specifically are healing you. It's that you're going to heal yourself. Now, if you're in a car accident, if I'm in a car accident, take me to the doctor, take me to the emergency room. But in terms of some of these this hurt and pain and the tension and the pressure and even the spiritual grief that somebody may be carrying. Yeah, that's something we can work on in terms of these techniques.
Well, I'd just like to say to any of our viewers or listeners who are finding what Craig Meriwether does fascinating, you can connect with him. You have a couple websites, right?
Yeah. I mean, probably the best one just for our conversation is Sacred Mystery Hypnotherapy. And you can find my, email me from there, find my phone number on there. Happy to talk with you over the phone. We'll set up a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And again, just we have to figure out the time zones. I can work with anybody, anywhere, just do the amazing technology we have nowadays. So yeah, just find me, sacredmysteryhypnotherapy.com. We can talk about whatever
And I think I saw that you occasionally do retreats too, right?
Yeah. We're setting some up for Sedona, of course. Where else would you go? We live so close, but we're doing some. My wife and I were doing some traveling this spring to some expos around the country and talking to people, and we're hoping to set up some retreats this year for Sedona later in the fall. But we'll see how the things are going in the world and all that, and we'll see what we can put together.
Awesome. So, Craig, what you are doing is just fascinating and much needed. And, I always say heal yourself and the world is healed with you. So, and what you're doing is fantastic. And I really appreciate it. Thank you for being on World.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. I really appreciate you inviting me. I appreciate you having this open, honest conversation about this, because these are some topics that are unusual. So I appreciate your trust in having me on. So thank you very much.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.